and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me to break down all that was Week 8 and get ready for Week 9. Yay. It's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
Well, I don't want to jump the gun here and hurt anybody's feelings, but I'm doing fantastic after my Cowboys stole a victory in Minnesota minus their most important player, which segues into the somber
This may
feeling.
be the wildest weekend. I don't like speaking hyperbole, but it's been an incredible 48 hours. I guess my question to you is, do you wish you hadn't signed? You just let Dak walk in free agency, and Mike White was still your quarterback. I mean,
no, I mean, for long-term success, absolutely not. But like what we saw in Week 8, whether it be surprise performances, injuries, performances while teams are dealing with injuries, like this week so far has been probably one of the most unpredictable / crazy weeks that I can remember of recent memory. And we still have one more game to go with the floundering Chiefs going up against the Giants offense that's getting back two important pieces on the outside tonight.
I know we focus on betting, but like the top 12 quarterbacks for fantasy, I was looking at this earlier and it just boggled my mind. Josh Allen, number one, sure. In a game where we'll talk about that. That was the fact that he was still the number one quarterback despite that performance is wild. Number two, Mike White. Number three, Jimmy Garoppolo. Tom Brady, number four, Justin Fields, Matthew Stafford, Ryan Tannehill, Geno Smith, Davis Mills, Joe Burrow, Carson Wentz, Cooper Rush. Those are your top 12. Like, what is this, like a simulation gone wrong? Like, what happened?
This is as much Madden as it is real life. I mean, yeah, you couldn't have predicted this earlier in the season that in a single week during the NFL season, you would have those names finishing top 12 ever. Like it's crazy.
So let's go to the betting board. Let's review. My best bet was the Bills minus 14. I'm not really sure how that covered, but it covered.
Crazy finish.
That game, everything said Bills over, Bills over, Bills over. And like it's 3-3, like late in the second quarter. I'm like, what is happening?
Disgusting. Miami did the same thing that Washington did the previous week against Green Bay. They had driven down into Bills territory deep twice early in the second quarter, and they couldn't capitalize. They turned it over once and then kicked a field goal the other time. I mean,
and then the Niners minus 4 covered also. Still not really sure how that came to fruition, but shouts to Jimmy G and rushing for 2 touchdowns. And the Bears just bearing their way through it. Although Jesse James' first touchdown somehow cashed, so that's real expected. The Texans, if you bet this game on Sunday morning, you cashed thanks to 22 straight points in the fourth quarter. Couldn't quite get there for me on our pick show. But if you bet them at 16.5, you cashed a ticket. Mike White, 400 yards, incredible game. Had 3 rushing yards or 4 rushing yards at one point, and finished with -4. So that was chalked up to a big old L.
Of course he did.
Khalil Herbert, remember we talked about him, 15.5 rushing attempts.
Yeah.
I think he finished with 23.
I think he definitely benefited from Damian Williams going out after taking the entire first series.
Yeah, well, he also ended up getting hurt at one point in the game and then coming back. So still cashed that ticket. And then the Jets team total, which I was very excited about and jumped on with you. Not only did that not cover, but they doubled the team total basically. So not good on us. So right now I am sitting at 3-3 for week 8. I am 28-1. I'm just very 500. I still have Daniel Jones pending 28.5 rushing yards. So we'll see how that goes tonight. As for your plays, you had the over in the Dolphins and Bills, which I loved. Did not cash. The Seahawks, that was a great call. I like Jacksonville. That was real dumb. I did like the under in that game, which cashed with ease. The Bucks just crush your
God,
tees.
what happened there? Like,
Uh,
how can you go into New Orleans and put up that performance when over half the game is played by Trevor Siemian?
we had Trevor Siemian, Cooper Rush, Mike White. Like it was just a backup
Gino,
party.
like,
Geno Smith. Yeah, it was week 8, man. It was wild. And then Joe Mixon. So what's that? 2 and 3 for you.
yeah, and that's something I want to know what happened in that Bengals Jets game. Why the hell wasn't Cincinnati running the ball more often when it was clear, and it was clear coming into the game, that New York has actually played decent pass defense over the last few weeks, and it was the ground attack that they were struggling with. Yet Cincinnati was very adamant about throwing the ball down the field, which led to turnovers and short fields and just
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was a wild weekend, including I got to talk about it. I got the big
Ugh.
dog behind me over there. Um, it's been a hell of a 24 hours as a Titans fan. I was feeling amazing. I saw Derrick Henry on the sidelines with his shoe off. I'm like, oh God, here we go. And then
Yep.
he ends up going back in the game. So I'm like, perfect. He's fine. He'll be okay. There was some minor thing. Maybe he get taped up again. It turns out he has a right foot fracture that they're saying 6 to 10 weeks. Some places they're saying season ending. Other places he's done. And if it's like other people that have had the Jones fracture, it might be the end of him as the franchise changing elite option that is going to be the reason the Titans make a deep playoff run. So after going 4-0, including wins over Kansas City, Buffalo, and Indianapolis, squeaking out one in overtime, it was quite the blow this morning. I guess for you as a non-Titans fan, Derrick Henry clearly is a part of their offense
Oh
and
yeah.
a big part of what makes them go. How are you viewing it at the betting window? Like, is this going to be an opportunity where the Titans are going to have some of that momentum and some of that value from when they were winning games against really good teams for people to take advantage of and kind of pound them? Like, you get a really good shot this week with, the Rams, who just added Von Miller to the fold. So now they get even better. But I guess for you, what are you doing with the Titans kind of in general, and how you're viewing them as a bet on or bet against team?
So I'm really interested to see how they implement these I mean, how they implement Adrian Peterson, who they signed, by the way, because he'll obviously be an early down kind of back. He's not going to be taking any of the receiving down work. The one area that I do think you will see them increase is the passing game, which if they can get Julio Jones healthy, and he can somewhat stay on the field, they have, one of the most dynamic duos on the outside with AJ Brown and Julio. So I think for me, I'd be leaning more into the overs in their games, especially because their defense hasn't been the greatest. I mean, Indianapolis, even with Carson Wentz playing some of the dumbest football that we've seen in
I
a
just
long time.
love the fact that they could not shut up about him not throwing interceptions.
And
And
then
he just piles them up. He should have had a couple against the Niners
yes.
too. Like,
Yeah, and then Philadelphia Eagle Carson Wentz showed up, and we all
yeah,
got to see the reason why they were sick of him. But yeah, like I'm not counting Tennessee out by any means, because I do like Mike Vrabel as a coach. I love what McNichols brings to the table with his pass catching. Like, say what you will about Derrick Henry's rushing ability, he's not the dynamic pass catcher. I mean, yeah, once he gets rolling, he's gone, but he doesn't present that threat out of the backfield,
yeah.
which teams will now have to scheme against. And it'll be interesting to see how they go about business. But I do think they increase the amount of passes, which Tannehill's more than capable of doing that. And with how their defense is,
Yeah, the
I'm
only
looking
thing
at
I'm
game
worried
total.
about is the offensive line is shaky at best. They have elite upside, but they've been banged up with injuries.
True.
And we saw how ugly it gets when they're not running much play action. Our team's going to respect the run with Adrian Peterson or, Blossing Game or, McNichols or whoever they end up putting back there, some other people off the street. Like I don't know how effective the passing game can be when the play action and you mentioned Julio's never, we've had him for on the roster and he just can't be on the field.
Yeah,
AJ
exactly.
Brown finally had a big game, but he's missed time. Like we can I'll let you go, but like I think there's a potential, like maybe they need to not consider another Adrian Peterson type or go trade for some other person like that, but instead look at receivers, bolster this core and attack. Like go get Odell, go get somebody, Michael Thomas, and throw the hell out of the ball and let Ryan Tannehill, be what he can be. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think for me, it'll be interesting to see how defenses adjust to this new look offense. Also, because if defensive coordinators do back up a little bit and they unload the box, there will be plenty of room for Jeremy McNichols, who we've already seen he can be more than adequate fill-in. I mean, he's not going to bring to the table anything near what Derrick Henry does in terms of that big playability, but if teams are backing out of the box and they're putting more DBs on the field, that's going to open up that running game, which should in turn present back the play action passing, because teams are not going to be able to scheme knowing, okay, we're going to be hit really hard with this battering ram of a running back. Whereas now they're going to go into the game saying, okay, we don't know what game plan they're going to utilize against us. So I think it's going to be a cat and mouse game. And for me, like, I'm not counting Tennessee out by any means, minus Derrick Henry, because they do have those guys on the outside that if they can get on the field, this is not similar to when Minnesota lost Adrian Peterson all those years ago and they had nobody at receiver.
Yeah. I would be interested to see if potentially Ronald Jones could be available, and or Trey Sermon as my favorite trade targets, but I'm not super optimistic that they're going to give up any sort of resources. And it's a real shame Darrington Evans couldn't finally come to fruition now that he's, finally get him healthy. He's back on IR. He's Rashad Penny 2.0. Let's talk a few other injuries. The Cardinals are just broken after JJ Watt goes on IR. Kyler's hurt, left ankle sprain.
Day to day.
He's been dealing with a lot of little things that I'm waiting for it to catch up. I feel like I've been saying this for 3 weeks and how much his numbers go down, and he just keeps winning. They finally lost against the Packers on Thursday, in a very weird, strange game that I thought they were going to seal.
That's horrible.
DeAndre Hopkins also hurt. He's got a hamstring strain. Obviously, with Christian Kirk and AJ Green and Rondell Moore, they can kind of get through that if it's a week or two. Chase Edmonds got hurt, looked really bad, thought he was going to be out for a while, ended up being able to come back into that game. We'll see.
I'm wondering with Edmonds if he has like just like a shoulder dislocation problem or an AC joint situation that he.
No, there's lots of people that have like I had a buddy in high school. He played hockey, played football, and his shoulder would just come out constantly, and it would just go right back in. And it's not ideal, but especially with Edmonds being a smaller guy, like I could see that being the case. So we'll keep an eye on him. Robert Tonyan finally seemed like he was going to start doing something, and then tears his ACL. He's done for the year. The Packers are in quite an interesting spot because they're really good and they have lots of potential, but they're losing pass catchers left and right, and they're another team that would make sense for a Michael Thomas, for an Odell, for somebody to be opposite Devontae Adams.
They're gonna really miss Jay Sternberger now.
Maybe they can trade for Dan Arnold. Is there a world where is Juju, like, can we get Juju healthy and get him on another team? Because it clearly
I'm pretty
seems
sure
like
Juju's out for the year.
okay, then maybe
Yeah.
not. But I
Yeah.
don't
So
know.
I'm
He
pretty
was a
sure
guy
his
that
time is done in
thrived as
Pittsburgh
a
too.
opposite somebody else. James Robinson got hurt dealing with a heel injury. We'll see. Carlos Hyde is obviously somebody that is fine, but based on the way Jacksonville looked against Seattle, I'm not really optimistic about them. Sam Darnold got hurt, concussion. It sounded like he wanted to go back at the game. Wasn't able to. We'll see as the week progresses what's up with him. T.Y. Hilton, ever injured, comes back, finally plays, gets hurt again.
And he will miss this week's game against the Jets.
Yep. Ditto for Damian Williams, who got hurt again, left in the first quarter, did not return in the game. Jalen Reagor got hurt. Your boy Dak is sat out this week. All signs point to him playing in week 9. So I think that was honestly like it was like obviously you won, so it didn't matter anyways.
Best case scenario, for sure.
But let him sit an extra week.
Yep.
So that way in week 16 or 17 or week 1 of the playoffs, he's not straining something extra. And because you guys, I think this is a very legitimate year for Dallas, where like if you tell me the Dallas Cowboys are the 2021 Super Bowl champions, I would not be shocked in the slightest. I think you have talent across the board.
That's terrifying to hear.
The Rams definitely made things more interesting. Arizona's obviously good. Green Bay is really good. So the NFC is pretty beastly. And then in the AFC, there's always, Mahomes still lingers, even though they're playing like doo-doo. Gronk came back, was supposed to be kind of an emergency option, ended up playing a little bit more, and now he's hurt again. So we'll see what's up with Gronk. Jameis tore his ACL.
He's done for the year.
Really sucks for the Saints. He was playing so well. Sean Payton had him making smart decisions.
Yep.
I guess what's your read on the Saints? Clearly they went to Trevor Siemian, who looked pretty solid, but he's still Trevor Siemian. Do they go back to more of a Taysom Hill and change their game plan? Was that kind of a 1 week blip, or do you think this is actually something like Trevor Siemian could be something that we need to consider week to week?
Well, so on the Taysom Hill front, he still hasn't cleared concussion protocol from a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, that's something definitely to monitor, is that if sometimes people will get these concussions that just don't go away. So there's no indication whether or not he's coming back this week. So this could be the Trevor Siemian show. And I tweeted this out during the game. I almost feel like from a fantasy perspective, Trevor Siemian is better for an Alvin Kamara than a Jameis Winston was, because Siemian is probably going to run the old school Drew Brees end of his career type game plan, where short passing, just get it out quick, get it to your playmakers kind of stuff. And with the way New Orleans defense is playing, I think they're basically a plug and play quarterback system right now, and they can still win games. Now, they're not going to win the Super Bowl with Trevor Siemian back there. And one player to keep an eye on that I recalled early this morning chatting with other people, Phillip Rivers is already on record as saying that he would think about a comeback late in the season after the high school football year in his coaching. He's been training. Now, keep an eye on Phillip potentially going to New Orleans.
After watching him down the stretch against the Colts, I think that would be nothing but bad news.
I'm just saying.
I think there's a few interesting options. I think Jimmy Garoppolo could be somebody that a team looks at. I don't
think San Francisco is going to
move on him,
because they can win with Garoppolo.
I don't think they're going to win though. That's the thing. Like, I know they beat the Bears, but you're in the division with potentially the 2 best teams in the NFC.
Yeah, it's very true.
It might stink and it might not be ideal, but they're a couple injuries away from just completely punting on the season. And for the long term, for the potential to win multiple Super Bowls, Trey Lance has to be the option. They have to do what Russell Wilson did, what other teams with good young quarterbacks is. Rookie quarterbacks give you such an advantage that if they can be awesome, you can spend all your money elsewhere and you don't have to worry about, and then you can do a lot of different things. So with Arizona really good, No, we'll see if Arizona stays healthy. If we talked about them as kind of a team that is a house of cards, and if all of a sudden Chandler Jones is hurt and JJ Watt's hurt and Kyler's hurt and AJ Green's hurt, and these injuries are starting to pile up, they're all of a sudden a team that is a marginal team instead of a dominant. Another team to look at.
Yeah, and let me add one more thing to the Garoppolo situation. If this upcoming week's game against the Cardinals was this past weekend, and it basically was the deciding factor as to whether or not San Francisco had a shot at making the playoffs this year, I do think that if they were to have lost that matchup, they potentially shop Garoppolo. But because of the way the schedule fell and all that, and they're kind of like right there in terms of like that last wild card spot, I really don't see them doing anything at the deadline.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder with that extra playoff team if teams are a little less willing to so the trade deadline is actually today. If you're listening to the podcast, we're recording this on Monday. It's on Tuesday, so I was thinking we had another week, but
no,
with the deadline being at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, I think you're probably right. The Bucks don't like. Okay, so I'm just reading all the trade blurbs, and apparently they want an extraordinary offer for Ronald Jones, a player that is a running back that they don't use. I mean, I guess they want that insurance in case Fournette gets hurt.
I was just gonna say, just look at what happened this weekend with King Henry. Like, somebody goes down, you need those legs.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if we get any other bombs. Let's turn our focus. Let's talk Week 9. A few things to get into, a few lines that jumped out to me. But for you, where's your head, where are your eyes, and potentially your dollars going as you take an early look at the betting board?
I mean, I'm still looking at that Bills Jaguars. Like, Buffalo is 2 touchdown favorite. I know it's in Jacksonville, but I mean, Buffalo hasn't even played their best game of the year yet, really. Yeah. And I mean, they should absolutely stomp these guys.
They played. Honestly, I think one of their better games was against Tennessee. They just couldn't finish the drives, but like 90% of that game, they looked absolutely incredible.
And then also too, for me, I'm really looking at that Ravens Vikings matchup, like off of a bye. Baltimore, I mean, they're going to be healthy going into a game against a beat up Vikings team with Justin Jefferson getting nicked up last night. I gotta lean Baltimore in this spot at home. And then I think another one that I'm really curious, it's definitely going to change based on tonight's outcome, but Green Bay currently has a 2.5-point dog going into Kansas City, which is giving the indication that Green Bay is a favorite on a neutral field here. And with the way that they've been playing since that first week blowout, I have to lean the Packers right now.
See, if I like this game, and obviously the game will be played by the time this gets out, but I'm pounding Kansas City right now if I like Kansas City.
Agreed.
I think they play well against the Giants, and then all of a sudden that line's 3.5, especially with the Packers injuries. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, if you like Green Bay, you wait, and if you like Kansas City, you jump on that now. There was a couple games that jumped out to me. I'm not really sure why I keep doing this, but Brian, I like the Houston Texans. Why is Miami a 7-point favorite against anybody? This is a Texas team that, granted, has not looked great, but they played the Rams and the Cardinals in back-to-back weeks, 2 of the NFC's best, potentially NFL's best. They got housed by the Colts, who we both think are really good. The Patriots, who just beat the Chargers in LA. The Bills before that. Like, they haven't, like, the last time they played anybody that's like on their level, I guess would be that, like, they have their schedule is like insane. Like, Jacksonville was on their level, and then they played the Browns, who are really good, the Panthers, who were playing well, now kind of struggling, the Bills, the Patriots, the Colts, the Cardinals, the Rams. Like, you could be talking about
That's a ridiculous
four
schedule.
of the top 8 seeds in top four like top 2 seeds in the NFC, top 2 or 3 seeds in the AFC, and some other really well coached, good solid teams. Like they got Miami this week. We'll see what Tennessee is next week. The Jets, like there could be some opportunities. Seahawks coming up, Jacksonville again. So I don't know. I just like I made this game. I think 4.5. Why am yeah, I made it 4.5 and it's 7. Like I would happily back the Texans if you can get the full touchdown.
I think too, if Tyrod Taylor returns this week, which they're saying he may return to practice on Wednesday,
Yeah.
as good as Davis Mills looked yesterday in the fourth quarter,
Yeah.
Taylor brings a different aspect to this offense, and they're able to control the clock, which against Miami, teams have been able to do fairly easily against them. And I do think that if Taylor is the QB, I like Houston getting a full touchdown because I think they're able to, prevent themselves from getting too far behind early, which would lead to them having to try to make a big old comeback attempt. But if it is Davis Mills again, I mean, the first halves of games have been absolutely atrocious for this team. And
Yeah.
I just don't know if we're going to see another performance like we did yesterday in the fourth quarter, regardless of who it's against.
100% agree. I also like the Niners when it was 3.5. It's now 2.5 across the board. I think between the Kyler stuff and probably people getting on the Niners a little early. Like I don't know what my deal is, but like I go back to the well with the same handful of teams, and I just keep thinking things are going to come out differently, and they're not.
Well, I will say about that Cardinal game, Green Bay bulldozed them on the ground. Like that was the one thing, and that's what San Francisco is going to want to do here. They're going to want to.
But Trey Lance falls in the end zone. They, instead of getting smushed at the 1, that game's a lot different. And I mean, the Niners were in that game for 4 quarters until they weren't. But also the Chargers going on the road as 2.5 or 3-point favorites against Philly. Like I know Philly looked amazing, but I think that was more about Detroit and less about Philly. I don't know. Is Philly just a team that's like when they play, average to below average teams, they can be competitive, but when they play really good teams, and then I guess if we think the Chargers are a good team, I know yesterday was a little gross, but if the Eagles win again against Detroit and the Chargers play better and win instead of struggling against New England, is this line 4.5 or 5? Like I always like to kind of think about not letting one game's results dictate where my head's at.
Yeah, this is a really interesting line because going into yesterday's game, the Chargers were a pretty decent favorite. If they had come out of that game as, victorious, I think this is more than likely over a field goal, probably closer to the 4 mark because I mean, on paper, the Chargers are one of the best teams in the NFL. They just ran into the buzzsaw named Bill Belichick, who seemingly has the number of every young quarterback he's ever faced in the history of football. So I really think that this is a good spot to get in early on the Chargers because they are clearly the better overall team. And the Eagles, it's hard for me to envision them doing what they did yesterday with Boston Scott running over Detroit and, Kenneth Gainwell, who was everyone's darling of the week for fantasy, doing absolutely nothing. And the fact that they still cannot utilize their best weapon on the outside, Devonta Smith.
Yeah.
I just don't see them keeping up with this Chargers team who, when not playing Bill Belichick or, the greatest minds ever in the history of football on the defensive side, they're going to score.
Yeah. Shouts to Jordan Howard, which 2 touchdowns with him. Like what? I'm ready for them yesterday. To Ryan Matthews or somebody else out of the woodwork. Okay, Brian. Week 9 bets. What are we making now? Is there any bets that you've gone to the window or planning on going to the window with? Colts minus 10.5 jumps out to me. I know the Jets just won and the Colts kind of fell apart, but I think the Colts are significantly better, and I think they embarrassed the Jets on Thursday night.
Man, that's even against the great Mike White. Um, I'm actually going with a couple here. I still like the Saints minus the touchdown
Okay.
at home, regardless of who's playing quarterback. I think that defense is just playing so good, and now with Calvin Ridley not with Atlanta, like that takes away a huge part of their offense. I just don't think the Falcons are going to be able to do much in New Orleans. And then the other one is Baltimore. I like them as a touchdown or more favorites at home against Minnesota. I just don't know what's going on down there, or up there, I should say, in Minneapolis. I think Mike Zimmer's time is very limited with the Vikings, and I think that this could be the straw that broke the camel's back for his tenure there, as the Ravens should roll this weekend.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like the smart money clearly loves Minnesota. They line up to back them each and every week. They think Vegas gives them this huge number, and then they always line up. And opened at 7, it's now 5.5. 71% of the bets, 56% of the money coming in Baltimore. But I'm with you. I think Baltimore is just a significantly better team. The problem with Vikings though is like when they play a crappy team, they'll blow them out for 3.5 quarters and let them crawl back in.
Yeah.
But then when they play a good team, they're competitive. So like I don't know. Like I don't know what to do with them. Like I'm always fearful to go there, but I agree with you. I think if you can get the Chargers inside 3 against the Eagles, I think that's definitely the move. The Niners, I really want to get there, but like now that it's at 2.5, I don't think I'm gonna touch that.
Honestly, I think the San Francisco game, I'd be going money line with them.
Just take the Niners on the money line. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
If they're gonna win that, or if they're gonna play well, that they're gonna win that game.
Exactly.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, the Colts make sense. The Steelers, like
I was just gonna say one more. Yeah, Pittsburgh at home. I'll lay the 7 with Pittsburgh this week because yes, Chicago made it a game with San Francisco, but
still lost by like 12 or something.
Yeah, by double digits or close to it.
Yeah, I just like the Steelers. Like I don't like what that was weird too. Like Cleveland
they
opened
just
up
like
as
to mush it up.
3.5 point favorite. They ballooned all the way out to 5.5, depending on where you got it. And Steelers just won on the field. Like I really like honestly want to just take week 8's results for the most part and just throw them out because I feel like people are going to overreact to them so much, and in the grand scheme of things, really, I don't know. I feel like it's gonna drive some numbers wonky, and there's gonna be potential, but we have to block out the Steelers beating the Browns, the Jets winning, all the stuff, the Cowboys beating Minnesota with Cooper Rush. Like I don't know.
I think for me, the reason why Pittsburgh has gotten back to my good graces is they are recommitted to running the ball. All the talk we heard in the offseason when they drafted Najee Harris was that they wanted to get back to old school Steelers football. In the last 3 games, we've seen that over 100 rushing yards for the team each of those weeks against decent rush defenses. I mean, not the greatest, but like they're limiting the exposure of Ben Roethlisberger, and it's really paying off for them.
Well, and I think they're finally being effective with it because I think they've been trying to do it. It's just their offensive line was garbage and they couldn't produce. But now they're actually being productive, and when they could run the ball, when their defense can make plays, all of a sudden they look much, much better. Make sure you smash that thumbs up if you're still watching. Make sure you subscribe. We really appreciate everybody hopping on. We were about halfway through the season. I'm very excited to see what the rest of the season unveils for us. We will be back on Friday with our best bets, with our player props, and hopefully we can get back in the green, Brian. I'm hanging around 50%. You're just right.
I need to have an over 500 week before I can even think about getting
crushing to start the season. The middle of the season is going to be our slug, and then we're going to crush to end it and end up with a really nice result. So that's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.